for you tonight.
It is so beautiful to see you.
I want you to want me.
Hey out there, live music fans. Welcome to episode number 27 of First Concert Memories, the monthly sidecast from your buddies at the Ugly American Werewolf in London, where we're trying to capture those great rock and roll stories of yore. When you went to see a band the first time, maybe you have no expectations, maybe you have huge expectations, maybe you get to go backstage and meet them. They're the kind of stories that keep that myth and majesty of rock and roll going all these many years later, especially after you don't get a whole lot of new rock and roll, or if you do, the record companies aren't pushing it. You got to find it on your own. But there's always those days where you went to see a band live and it changed your life, and that's what we're trying to capture here on First Concert Memories. And we've got a great storyteller for you here today. His name is Tony Michaelides. He is an industry of the music business and has worked with some real legends. I mean, people like David Bowie and Peter Gabriel, and he's got a lot of stories. He's got his own podcast on the Pantheon Network, Moments That Rock, that recreates some of these crazy nights and days in the business that he's familiar with. And it's a fun show. He's got a lot of good folks on there. He can spin a yarn, that's for sure. We wanted to have him on here today because Tony went to see Led Zeppelin when he was a teenager in 1969. I mean, after the first album come out, after Zeppelin had had that success in America but hadn't quite gotten it in the UK yet, in Manchester, he went to go see them right after his birthday. And so we talk a little bit about that gig and Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, but honestly, Tony can go on a lot of different tangents. It's hard to keep him on track sometimes, so we really kind of let him roll a little bit, like what's going on in the music industry today? What did he see change over the years? What was meaningful to him? Who are some of the characters he may have bumped into or known? Give us a couple of side stories, because getting it all into one hour-long show isn't easy. But we too talk a little bit about Led Zeppelin, their meaning in the pantheon of great rock bands, what it meant to him, despite the fact that he's seen everybody over the years, what seeing Led Zeppelin meant to him as a teenager, and the fun story about getting to go backstage to meet the boys. But before we get into all that, we do have a little bit of business to take care of. Like Tony, we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a family of over 100 different shows. You can learn more at pantheonpodcast.com or follow on socials at Pantheon Pods. And you know we're going to give a shout out to our intergalactic, super duper worldwide sponsor, rarevinyl.com, who is based in the UK, folks, and they have over 250,000 items in stock, and they have first prints, they've got rare and hard to find items, they've got deleted singles, they've got imports, they've got picture discs, they've got everything you want, and yes, they have a ton of killer Led Zeppelin stuff. And what's really killer is they gave us a code, UGLY, UGLY, that if you go and use it at checkout, you can save 10% off one entire order. Not just one album, but one entire order. So you want that first print edition of Physical Graffiti? Go get it. Go get a poster from back in the 60s. Go get an old magazine that has Robert or Jimmy on the cover. Buy whatever your heart desires, and then use the code UGLY. You can save a big fat 10% at checkout. So, bottom line, collectors, go to rarevinyl.com, use the code UGLY, save 10%. Your record collection will thank you. Now back to Tony. He's generous with his time. He's a fun guy. He's been through a few things in the business. He's seen a few things, met a few people, and he's got a fun show of his own. So we thought he'd be a great guest for First Concert Memories, because Jackson and I never got to see Led Zeppelin when we were kids, and we never will. And when we created First Concert Memories, we always hoped we would get someone to tell us about seeing Led Zeppelin live. And while maybe the show isn't all about seeing Zeppelin live, it's the starting point of a fun conversation with an industry veteran. So here we go, talking with Tony Michaelides about seeing Led Zeppelin in Manchester in 1969.
Hello, Jen.
There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yes. How are we coming through?
Good, excellent. Nice to meet you guys.
You look great, though, Tony. Hey, I'm Mac. We spoke before. That's Jackson. This way, that way, whatever way.
Absolutely. Well, it's got your names on the bottom. I know the other one because it's me.
Oh, there you go. I guess that helps.
Well, thank you for the invite, Jack. It's really good. It's funny, I wrote almost a chapter in my book about meeting Led Zeppelin.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's my podcast is called Moments That Rock, and obviously when you're 15, it was the day after my 15th birthday, June the 15th. Wow. In fact, I saw it was before we went to pounds, shillings and pence. So it was kind of like before decimal, it was like 15 shillings. And it was the 15th. I know it's one of your questions, but it was the 15th of June. And on the 22nd, I went to see Pink Floyd, and it was all for both under £1.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Couldn't get a bag of crisps for that.
No, you want to see David Gilmour in Madison Square Garden? It's $900.
Really?
And that's just to be downstairs, not to be up front, just like downstairs.
Well, I'm a boring old fart because, like, I'm old, but I'm glad I'm old because I saw everybody ever meant anything to me in under 2,000 seaters. So, going and watching people in non-acoustic venues like, football stadiums and baseball things, it's like you're watching them on the screen.
That's right. Yeah. You might as well just get the DVD. It's cheaper and you'll be up closer and the sound will be perfect.
And you don't have to listen to me moaning about it either.
Well, look, welcome to the show. And we talked a little on the phone about how Ugly American Werewolf, our weekly show, we'll have folks come on and artists come on, talk about what they're up to. We'll do classic album reviews, a concert review, stuff like that. But on First Concert Memories, we're trying to go back in time to a fateful night or afternoon, as the case may be, but a fateful time in your life where you saw some band, whatever it was, some artist for the first time live, and how it changed your life. And if it got you a chapter in your book, I got to imagine that it was pretty impactful. But look, we were born in 72 and 73 respectively. So by the time we started to wake up and be like, oh, there's rock bands. Oh, one of them's called Led Zeppelin. They were already gone.
Yeah.
And we had to settle for, bad examples like Live Aid and Atlantic Records and, that kind of stuff. So when we made First Concert Memories, we're like, I hope we get to hear from people who could tell us stuff about like the Elvis and the Beatles and the Led Zeppelins of the world who we never saw. So trust me, Tony, we're excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. I don't think you can see this, can you, really? That actually is a Led Zeppelin ticket from, that's the one from 69, but I've also got a ticket from 2 years later for 1971.
Wow.
Yeah.
How much was that one?
That was 1 shilling more.
Yeah, one extra shilling.
But it was just the Free Trade Hall. In fact, the Free Trade Hall. I mean, I went and Googled it when you sent me that note, Mac. But it's an amazing amount of history. That you remember when Dylan went out with the band and that person in the audience called out Judas. That was at the Free Trade Hall in Manchester in 1966.
Wow,
that's my hometown. Manchester's a big music haven. Everybody from Oasis, Stone Roses, New Order, Joy Division, everybody.
Oh yeah. No. Manchester's the bomb, no doubt about that. Yeah. And some of our favorite bands have come from the Midlands and thereabouts. And there's one band that's on tour right now doing stadiums in North America, Jackson. I actually could get tickets to that for Thursday night if you want to take a quick trip to Chicago.
I saw that. That is that's something to think about, but that's
it's
an
tempting,
awful quick
isn't it?
turnaround. That's the problem.
I know. My daughter's like, well, where would you stay at? I'm like, well, I don't think I'd stay anywhere. I'd stay. The show goes to 11. I go to a bar. I go to a late bar. I go to a diner, and then I go to the airport in the morning and catch the early flight.
Well, they got the military out in the sleeps there now, haven't they? In Chicago.
So I should be fine walking around at 3 a.m, right? I don't need a hotel room there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Bonham.
And I am the Irish werewolf in England, Peter Bullock.
And you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Okay, so we'll take you back there. We're talking about, was it June 15th, 1969? Unbelievable. In Manchester there. It was Led Zeppelin's 69 tour. They'd done a few shows in America, but this is the UK summer tour where, I don't know, it looks like they weren't sure where to play. Like, although this venue, Free Trade Hall, is pretty, like you say, everybody played there.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like when they went to France and other places, they weren't exactly sure where to play, not only size-wise, but the kind of folks who might show up. Because if you saw the recent Becoming Led Zeppelin from the 69 tour, that's when they had like a matinee, and there's little kids there. I mean, there's like 8-year-olds there. And
covering their ears.
Yeah, they're like not really sure what to do here. So take us back to when you found out about it, why you went, all that kind of stuff.
Well, basically, my entire social life was like the people that are into the same music, went to the same gigs and everything. I mean, I've got like endless stories about, working with people whose records I bought as a kid. The weird thing is, with me doing a podcast with Pantheon, like you guys, is I interviewed a guy called Henry Smith, which was my most listened to podcast in 3 years. It was over Christmas a couple of years ago. Okay. And he was Jimmy Page's roadie, right from the Yardbirds, right through Led Zeppelin. And I met him in Florida when I was living there. He lived like a mile away. And he was actually obviously at that gig, 50 years ago.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. And you told me a great story, which I'll tell you offline. I think actually I already told you, Jackson, from Henry about Champagne and John Bonham. That was
that's the one. That's the same guy. Yeah.
Great one. Yeah. So you got your gang, your crew of folks who like this blues-based harder rock then, yeah?
There was a lot of venues actually there, guys. There was a place called the Magic Village. And Bowie was on tour with Mark Bolan. He was supporting him, and he went to play to the Magic Village. It's another story. I won't bore you with it now, but it was quite funny actually because I went with the girl and went to buy her some cigarettes, and while I was buying her some cigarettes, David Bowie was outside and invited her in for a drink, and she said, "No thanks, I'm with someone."
Nice.
So yes. Well, shall I just go on a roll about Zeppelin?
Yeah, I mean, look, we love Led Zeppelin, and obviously they came out of the Yardbirds. We know the history and all that kind of stuff. Were you familiar with the Yardbirds before they became the new Yardbirds?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I interviewed the drummer a long time ago.
Jim McCarty.
Yeah.
We have too.
He was a friend of Henry's. So sorry?
I said we have too. He's been on our show.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Excellent. He's a lovely guy. He came up. He came up to stay in Florida, and my friend Henry came. We met in the place he was renting, and I was talking to him and everything. But there's so much history in that kind of stuff. I mean, England in that time, like you talk about the Midlands and stuff. So you're talking like the Black Sabbaths, the Deep Purples, and all that and everything. And it was great because there was music both sides of the Atlantic. Because that stuff, you started here with the Mississippi Delta blues singers, and then you slung it over to the UK with the Zeppelins and everything. We slung it back, and you had all the hair bands and stuff. So it was like rock. But the Zeppelin thing was, just to quote a few things from my book, it was kind of like, I went with my friend Ken, who got the tickets, and since then he's been known to me as Sir Ken, because I officially knighted him for finding Led Zeppelin tickets. And one of your questions is where we sat. We were sat on the second row.
Oh my God.
Which was, and we're talking about, I think it was 2,100, the seater. I'll tell you the story, and hopefully you can edit to make some sense out of it. But
sure.
We got to the gig, and in those days there was no merchandise or anything like that. You were lucky if you got a program,
right? And
there was the commissionaire at the door. So we went in. He took the stub off our tickets. We went in, and then we just went and sat down. I don't think there was a support band on. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there wasn't actually.
Okay.
And we watched the entire set, and it was amazing. And then, on the way out, obviously they want to usher everybody out as quickly as possible. We hung around outside, in the foyer, so to speak. And all I wanted to do, there was like an entrance at the back, and there was like an entrance towards the front, which literally when you went in, your seats were there for us. So I there was a poster on the wall. So I asked the commissionaire if I could take it off the wall.
Okay.
And it was the Led Zeppelin one, with the Zeppelin, right?
Yeah.
In my book, I wrote about it being, when I got divorced, it was like my poster pension because I lost the poster. So I signed Led Zeppelin poster from all of them, and God knows where it is. So anyway, I asked the commissioner if I could take the poster off the wall and took it. And it was just like all the gigs had sold out and everything, but it was it was like a monument. And all I wanted to do, sticking my head in the hall, all I wanted to do was watch the roadies take the equipment down. I was like a bass player, pretty bad one at that. But for me to watch all these Marshall stacks and everything was amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm in there and I stick my head in, and then I shuffle in with my friend Ken, and I walk, and I just stand literally. The stage is 6-8 foot high or something. I'm stood there just watching it like this. Anyway, Robert Plant walks on the stage, and I got my roll-up poster in my hand, and he kind of stops. He's talking to his roadie and everything, and then he stops. He looks at me, and he kind of leans across down this and says, "Do you want me to sign that?" And it's like, yes, please, sir. So he signs it, and then he rolls it up and he gives it me back. And it's so weird because when I was writing this in my book, I was taken back to a time and a place. I was in the Free Trade Hall, seeing those things firsthand. It was like, you lose a bit of your memory when you're old, but not when it comes to a gig.
Right, that's good, yeah.
So he rolled it up, handed it me, and then he paused. And he said, well, it's not much good with just me on it. Do you want to come and meet the guys? And it was like, yes, please. So he takes us to the thing. And obviously there's a security guy. He kind of nods him to come in. The guy didn't really want to let us in, but we smiled as we went past as if to say, like, we come with royal approval.
Don't mind us.
Stay there, you. So we go backstage. There's a band from Liverpool called the Liverpool Scene supporting them. And again, to quote my book, it was when we went backstage and everything, it was the best tour I've ever seen in my life because it had Led Zeppelin on it. So we go inside, and in those days, I mean, this was a place where an orchestra, the Halley Orchestra, played. And you were asking about the history of I wrote it down, the history of the Free Trade Hall. Mm-hmm. It was built in 1853, and it was on the site of the Peterloo massacre, and it was to commemorate the repeal of the Corn Laws in 1846, and it's Manchester's longest-serving building. I mean, I didn't know this till half an hour ago. Wow. So I was in. It was like a monument to see a band that became like a monument,
Yeah.
So we go backstage, and like I say, there was no hospitality. There was no crates of drinks. There was no sandwiches and all this and everything. It was literally like a table, the table with the mirrors with all the bulbs on, where people used to get ready to go on stage.
Oh, sure, yeah.
All that. And then there were the four of them sitting around. And the weirdest thing of all was we were in a corner, and they weren't trying to get rid of us or anything. So in fact, we stayed there so long that we missed our last train home. I can't even remember how we got home, but it didn't matter. So we were kind of, again, at the end, this was like music taking you back to a time and place. I'm writing this finger typing on my book, and it was like, I thought, oh my God, because if you can picture this, I mean, I know we're in video, but Jimmy Page has got his hands underneath his thighs, and he's rocking on the table by the mirrors, Okay. And Robert Plant's in the other corner. He shouts across him. He says, "Are you going to come over to our place tomorrow and we'll finish that track?" And I'm thinking, oh my God, was I there at a moment in history? I mean, it was a bit before Stairway to Heaven or something, but I thought, oh my God, I wonder what he was talking about and everything. Yeah. But they were so relaxed and everything. They all signed the posters and everything. And like I say, Peter Grant was probably there as well. And it was so funny because I was 15, and a lot of my friends had gone to the gig, but none of them had met Led Zeppelin. So when I went to school the following day, I had my hair tucked out my, yes, I did have hair, and it tucked over my shirt and everything. And I had Led Zeppelin under my arm with the kind of, with the sleeve facing out. And I timed my trip to the school perfectly because there was a girls' school up the road and then the boys' school. So I would be at the bus stop just when all the girls were coming past, because I was a rock star for a day,
Yes.
So I went in with my poster, and then we went down to have a coffee afterwards, and I was just telling them about my new mates,
Right, yes, buddies. Holy mackerel.
But it was, I don't know, it was just incredible because they were just on the verge of world domination then.
Right.
I mean, when you read about bands like that now, I mean, they kind of set the precedent in a way, I mean, how many wanted to be Led Zeppelin and stuff. But the thing with them is, the other thing, it was funny because when my book came out, I was doing interviews on other people's podcasts. And one guy said to me, you expect people to say, what's David Bowie like and stuff,
Sure.
I understand that. But he said to me, what do you think the music industry taught you, Tony, that would have helped you meeting Led Zeppelin as a 15-year-old? And I went, that's a good question. Not as much as you think, David. His name was David. Not as much as you think, David. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, when I was 5 or 6, I realised on the school playground I didn't hang out with this jerk because he was a bully. And when I was in my teens, I used to have to stand in front of girls and ask them out. And if they said no, would I ever ask another girl out again? For the fear of rejection. No swipe left and swipe right and everything. And I still say to this day, you don't learn to drive a car until you're out on the road with everybody else. I had no idea as a 15-year-old that I was doing Latin and shit like that at school, Right. I had no idea that I was learning my interpersonal skills on the street to work in an industry where communication skills thrive. They don't teach you that, So I was kind of hanging out with rock stars and feeling like I deserved to be there. I wasn't like in the way and I wasn't awkward or anything. And they really were great guys. And it's funny actually, because a friend of mine now, Les Garland, was one of the co-founders of MTV, and he knows Robert Plant really well, and he sent me a photograph of him with him. And it's great really, because when you look at a band, I mean, I went, there was a conference in the UK called In the City, which was actually the next building along to the Free Trade Hall. And it was started by Tony Wilson from Factory. And the first one was like reasonably attended. The second one had everybody there, like Robert Morris Oberstein, who ran CBS and stuff and everything. But it also, Peter Grant was there. And it was so weird because when I went to register, I was in the elevator next to him. And it was like, you know, it wasn't awkward, but it's like I had so much I wanted to say to him. But I kind of like, it was more like, hey, how are you doing? You know?
Right, yeah. No, I understand.
I kind of avoided it. But the things I've learned about Zeppelin since then, guys, that, you know, Peter Grant managed Led Zeppelin on a handshake deal with Jimmy Page, you know. And the thing is, they kind of, you know, there are more people now buy Led Zeppelin records that weren't even born when they split up.
Yep.
And, you know, they set a standard. And, you know, the other thing I love about them is when you look in those days, I mean, like the likes of Clapton and Jimmy Page, they would walk on stage and they were all completely off their faces. You know, they'd almost be propped up playing these incredible solos.
Sure.
And when the only time they reformed was for the Ahmet Ertegun Foundation, when Ahmet Ertegun died.
Yep.
Because he signed Led Zeppelin within 15 minutes of meeting them. And it was just incredible to read the history behind it. And then they did that gig, you know, when Ahmed died, and the internet went down. There were so many people from Japan and all over the world wanting to come. Anyway, Henry told me that he got a phone call one night. This is Henry Smith, Henry the Horse Smith, he's known as.
All right.
And he got this call, and it's like 9 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, and it goes, Henry? He said, yeah. He said, it's Jimmy. He said, Jimmy who? He said, Jimmy fucking Page. And he invited him to the gig, you know. And so he went over from the States. He was living in St. Petersburg, and he went over to see him. So the gig happens, and then he comes back, and then I don't hear anything. So I'm sitting there, and I phone him up, and he picks up the phone. I go, well?
Yeah.
He said, well, what? I said, what were they like? And there's this pause, and he goes, Tony, I have never heard Jimmy Page play like that in my life. And when you think of it, he was completely off his face in all those gigs, you know.
Oh yeah.
And like now he's like a grown up and a little old man, but he's still Jimmy Page. He said it was unbelievable the guitar that he was playing and everything. It's funny actually that there's a thing on YouTube. I don't know if you see it with Jack White and the Edge.
Yeah.
They're watching Jimmy. Yeah, and they're like this.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, you know, they don't make him like that anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't shock me that Robert was nice because, I mean, Jimmy had been with the Yardbirds. He'd been a session man.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he was a little older and a little more like, keep the kids away from me. But you know, Robert Plant was 20 when he did that for you, a 15-year-old. So he
Was
probably
he 20?
Yeah, he wasn't yet 21 years old. You know, that was still a couple of months away. So while there's a big difference between 15 yesterday and 20 and I've already toured America, it's only a few years, you know. So he's probably like, hey, kid, yeah, come on. I was in your shoes not that long ago, and I'll sign your poster. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible because when you think of it, they were on the. I mean, the gig sold out, but you know, from there it kind of exploded because when we went to see him in '71, I mean, I was lucky really because I knew a guy in the record store where I used to buy all my records, and he was the kind of ticket agent, so he would keep tickets on one side, so I didn't have to kind of, you know. I could always get kicked
for his preferred people. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
I mean, it still brings a lot of fond memories back, and even to talk about it now, like I said, I loved writing about it because for me it was a real moment of rock, and it's not something that comes and goes. I mean, certain things happen in your life, and they were great at the time. But speaking for myself, and you know, a 30-year career in the industry with a lot of people whose records I'd bought as a kid. You know, I watched David Bowie split the Spiders from Mars in front of me, and then 30 years later, I'm having my dinner with him and arranging his promotion. And that doesn't happen to a kid from the north of England. And I'm not making excuses, but I don't really think the gratitude sets in until the roller coaster ends. You sit back and you thought, wow, that was quite a ride, you know. I mean, meeting Led Zeppelin as a kid would have been more than enough. Little did I know that I was going to work in an industry like that and stuff. And I was thinking, like, you know, meeting somebody like Henry and just, he wanted to, I think I might have told you this, Mac, when we spoke, but he wanted to write a book on Zeppelin. Richard Cole had written one. Richard Cole was a tour manager and passed away. And I said to him, you know, I said, listen, nobody wants to know the sex, drugs and rock and roll. They invented it, you know. Talk about other things because there's some great stories, and like the one I told you was a funny one. But I mean, Peter Grant, he came from he was a wrestling promoter, and he was like fierce as a lion. But the thing was, he was fierce but kind of gentle with it, if that makes sense. Because the thing is, if you were selling bootlegs and stuff and taking money away from his band, he would hang you over balconies or do whatever.
Yeah.
He was all about protecting his artists, you know. And in the city, it was the second one that Peter Grant, and he did like the equivalent of it was an interview. Ed Bicknell was interviewing him, Dire Straits' manager. And they were sat on chairs, and it was in a big room at the Midland Hotel where they held the conference. And I was like on the third row. Ed Bicknell said to him, "Did you ever think of like replacing John Bonham?" You know, and it was so like moving because you could see a lump in his throat. And this was this fierce as a lion geezer, you know.
Oh yeah.
And he just looked at Ed and he said, "Without John Bonham, there is no Led Zeppelin." And he was almost in tears. And when you think of it, if you've read and you've got all the back, you know, stories about it, but he became a recluse after that. He went to the south of England and lived in the middle of nowhere, and somebody went out to buy his food and stuff. And he
withered, honestly, after that. He kind of withered. He fell apart after
that. Totally. Yeah. But when he said like that, and he's right, you know, because like when you think of all the things that have changed since then, I mean, you look at Jethro Tull. I mean, everybody thinks Ian Anderson, his name is Jethro Tull because he's the only original member. And there's so many different members over so many different, almost centuries with him now. But it's still Jethro Tull. But the thing is that, I mean, a good friend of mine that I worked with for 10 years and managed when he left New Order was Peter Hook. And, you know, they still go out as New Order, but, you know, he was the only one to look at. I'm not saying it because he's my friend or anything, but he was the only one to look at on stage because he had a low slung bass and he was giving it all this. And the others would turn around and have their backs to the audience and everything. Yep. So to have somebody like that go out of the band and still, you know, I mean, that's a very sad story because they've been in litigation for like 15 years now. It's cost them a fortune. I'm digressing a bit, but I said to him last time I saw him, I said, you know, it's so sad to hear this because it kind of spoils the legacy of a band like that should be remembered forever. I said, listen, if this was a divorce, you'd be talking now for the sake of the kids, wouldn't you? You'd have of put all the past behind you. But like for them to just be at loggerheads with each other. And Hookie's like, you know, like I say, the other thing, going back to the Zeppelin gig, was that there was a venue at the side of it called the Lesser Free Trade Hall. Oh. And that's where the Buzzcocks put on that famous Sex Pistols gig. Oh. When there was like, it's so funny because I've said this endless times. I'm one of the first people to admit that I wasn't there, you know, because everyone
else says they were, yeah.
Everybody says they were there. They would have felt like an arena, you know. Yeah. No, I wasn't there. But Tony Wilson ran Factory Records. That's where Barney and Hookie met after school, and then he went the next day to buy guitars after that gig. Mick Hucknall was there from Simply Red, Morrissey was there, John Cooper, all these people who went on to have careers. The audience was just inspired by a gig like that. That's not really anything to do with Led Zeppelin, but it is in a way. It's kind of like, it's a monument. When you ask me to do this, it's like, I don't mind doing podcasts and things, but there's some things that kind of really excite you. And wow, you know, this is nice to tell a story like that.
You mentioned that day sticking your head back in the hallway to see the Marshall amps going through. Had you heard anything that loud before? Or was this
no, never. There you go. And the thing is, it's like, you know, you're so right, Gary, because the thing is, it's like, I think there was part of me that judged the band by their volume. I mean, you know, they were very good. I mean, Bonzo they're all great musicians, the three of them. And Plant was a great frontman. I mean, if you could pick 4 people to be in a band, I don't know if you would get better 4 people, because you need one to be kind of fairly laid back, like John Paul Jones, but very accomplished in the fact that he could play keyboards and he could play bass. But he wasn't like, you know, rocking out on stage. And then you have Page, that whole hall is filled. And then Plant was like a classic frontman and everything. But yeah, but I mean, it was loud, but it was kind of like, it wasn't painfully loud. You could hear everything, and it had to be loud. It was Led Zeppelin, for God's sake. So,
well, to me, that kind of ushered in that era. Like before that, everything was kind of, I mean, you had rock, but it wasn't like that.
No.
To me, they were the ones that really pushed it. And I asked that because there is a scene in Becoming Led Zeppelin where they're playing some kind of like, it looks like an amphitheater or something, and people look like they're shell-shocked. They don't understand what this is. The little kids have their hands over their ears, and the band looks like they're playing to an arena, the way they're strutting around like that.
Yeah,
so absolutely. It really looked like they came out of the box hot as rock stars.
But when you think, I mean, obviously they didn't play it then, but it still sends shivers up my back now when you hear, like, when the levee breaks. And it's like, it's only a drum, but it's like the drum. And then at that gig, Dazed and Confused. Oh my God, that's not like a song that you could just, can you turn it down a bit? It's like you turn it up, it's kind of like, and 3 instruments. And just there was when you think of it, it's like even when I think I saw U2 at Wembley about in the 80s when they were just exploding, and like the Edge has got a great guitar sound, but underneath the stage there was like an entire room full of equipment, and it's got so sophisticated now that if they broke a string or anything in those days, that was it. You had to play your 6-string guitar with 5 strings, and you could get it changed after the number. You were all right, but
you got to keep going.
It was. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and again, I was a kid, so I was just getting into all that. There was a lot of bands that I did judge in a way about the volume, because if it was almost like literally back in your seat, then you would think, But in that time, I saw a lot of loud bands, 10 years after, and Jethro Tull and people.
Well, did they? My question is though, because I'm just looking at the set list from our friends at setlist.fm. After Killing Floor, they do White Summer Black Mountainside, which is an acoustic bit, and then you go into Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, which is also acoustic. Did you recall, did Jimmy sit down to play that?
No, I don't think he sat down for anything, but it's funny because I don't remember. I remember the loud ones, like Gary was saying. It was kind of like they were kind of, you literally sit up because it kind of grabs you straight away. But I can't remember, I'm Going to Leave You, Babe, or something.
Babe, I'm Going to Leave You. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that was again off Led Zeppelin one, wasn't it?
That's right.
And I think they, I should really find out if there was any support, because I don't think they played for like 2 hours. I think they played for like, an hour with a couple of encores or something like that.
Well, who knows? I mean, the thing is, they only played 11 tunes that night. However, Train Kept A-Rollin', they can play that for 15 minutes. Dazed and Confused, they can play that for 30 minutes. I don't think they did, but they could,
Well, they didn't. I don't think they've written it then. I mean, I don't know what album it wasn't on the first album, was it?
Dazed and Confused wasn't it, Jackson? Yeah.
I think so.
In fact, Dazed and Confused was something they did in the Yardbirds before he left.
Oh, wow. I fancy me not remembering that then, because that's an epic.
And How Many More Times is kind of a long song anyway. And the last song, at least the one that's on here, is Moby Dick. And you were talking about, hey, I'll come by to work on that track tomorrow. They were obviously already working on Led Zeppelin too, so who knows what that might have been. Might have been a real heavy one.
Yeah, but when you think of it, looking back now, I mean, they changed the whole kind of, if model is the right word, of kind of the music industry. Like for instance, Peter Grant rewrote the act for like live bands, because in those days they weren't getting any money, and he said like 10% for the guys, the booking agents said 10% of Led Zeppelin is worth 90% of any other band. So he kind of changed it so that bands were going out and getting played live. And like I said, he didn't have a contract. And the other thing that Henry told me was, Jimmy's roadie, was they would always get paid in cash before the gig. And they used to go backstage into the promoter's office, and he opened the drawer and there'd be a wad of cash and a gun on top of it. This was in England, for God's sake,
Yeah. I mean, well, it's a dirty business. And you could just say, the promoter could just say, nope, you're not getting that. Or didn't go as well as I hoped, so you're getting half of what I gave you. And if you don't have Peter Grant, who could pick him up and shake him by his ankles until he gives you all that money, bands had to live with that sometimes.
Yeah. I think I told this to you, man. I wish my mother was alive to thank her for the time she gave birth to me, because to grow up in like a culture like that, because the friends you had, the places you went, was all like you had the same record collection, and stuff. It was just a great education, because all my pocket money was spent on buying records and going to gigs. That was the only reason I got a job. I needed money to buy records and go to gigs. It wasn't I wasn't ambitious. It was just I need to have some cash to go in with my pocket money or my wages. And then all of a sudden, when I ended up, at 20, working in the music industry and getting all my records for free, that was kind of like winning the pools.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we're always kind of sad about. I mean, because like Mac was saying before, by the time we figured out Led Zeppelin, they were already gone. So we didn't get to experience them the way that you did. Still enjoyed them, but not in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, do we know? You probably do. When did they split up? What year was it?
It was, John Bonham died, right near when John Lennon died. It was 1980.
Yeah.
Late 1980. And then, I think it was official maybe in 81 or 82, but as soon as he died, it was over.
Yeah. Well, you can't replace. I know Jason, his son, has done some gigs with them, hasn't he? Just to play. I think they did all day, didn't they?
What's that? He did play with them. He did Atlantic Records. He did the thing at the O2 with them. And he's out, actually, Jackson, I just got tickets for it. He's out doing Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin Experience, and they're going to celebrate the double album.
Does he have, that'll be awesome. Does he have Mr. Jimmy with him?
Who's that? No, he does not.
The Asian dude.
Oh, I don't know.
Because that dude, like, you'd swear that really was Jimmy Page.
Really?
Yeah.
Has he got a Page lookalike?
Well, he's got that guy, Mr. Jimmy, and I think he's Japanese, and he looks a lot like he's got all the moves and all the stage equipment and everything. So
interesting.
So where are you going to see him, Bonham?
Palace.
Oh, okay, cool. And that looks like it's in the end of October, so we'll definitely have to talk about that.
Yeah. But so, I mean, they did most of the new album, and then they did, stuff that they knew, like Train Kept a Rollin', but did I Can't Quit You, Babe, Dazed and Confused, White Summer, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, You Shook Me, How Many More Times, Communication Breakdown. It's what they had.
Right. But like we talked about before, it looks like they also did Moby Dick, what would be Led Zeppelin too. So that was back in the day where you could see stuff that was not yet recorded.
Yeah. And they never did Killing Floor. They never did As Long as I Have You.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's rock and roll comedian Don Jameson, and you're listening to my Pantheon podcast partners, the Ugly American Werewolf in London, and actually, they're kind of beautiful.
Tell us then, all right, where does this rank as far as all the shows you'd seen as a young man, even after you got into the business? Is this still way up there as far as special night in your life?
Yeah, definitely. Probably a top 5, I would have thought,
Yeah.
It's not until, I hadn't been to a lot of gigs then, but to have like that, I saw like in that period, I saw, legendary events like Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars, Bob Marley and all the other bands that were coming up. Because I really like Jethro Tull and people, then, because we called it progressive rock in England. So, but Zeppelin, and the Pink Floyd, when I saw the Floyd the week later, that was quite an amazing gig because there was a renowned DJ in the UK called John Peel. He used to play a lot of up and coming bands, that wouldn't get on daytime. That's where I learned, that's where I got into all my music from, because he was playing them all on Radio 1. Hang on, senior moment, what was I talking about? Pink Floyd. So when I went to see the Pink Floyd, I remember to this day, there was a poster, that I didn't get that poster, The Masked Gadgets and Augments, More Furious Madness from the Pink Floyd. It started, the lights went down, and John Peel was kind of the DJ, but there was like a kind of desk in the corner and equipment. Okay. And the lights go down, and then for 2.5, maybe 3 minutes, it was frying bacon. So you were in an arena, and the smell of bacon, you were like going livid. It was like, oh my God, the smell of bacon. And we were just waiting until the band came on. It was hilarious.
Bizarro, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great John Peel story, though. Never heard that one before.
Yeah. Gone too soon. He was a great DJ. But yeah, they were, the gigs were, again, it's something I wrote about, and I said, there's so many bands that were great, and even the ones that weren't great were never that bad. It's kind of like, it was still good. I think Zeppelin was actually, it was the second record I ever bought. I bought a band, the first one was a band called Steamhammer, and then I got into Led Zeppelin 1. And I think that kind of, that made me want to, that was my type of music. The funny thing is, as your tastes expand when you get older, all those records like Sam and Dave and Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett, I ignored all those. I was like growing my hair and I was into progressive rock, but later on I thought, wow, did I pass by on all that?
That's funny because we didn't get into progressive rock until we were older, right? The heyday of progressive rock was really the 70s. In the 80s, you had progressive rock doing, Owner of a Lonely Heart and, that kind of stuff. Genesis was doing Invisible Touch, So that's how we grew up with those bands. And then it was in the last 10 years that I'm like, no. Listen to 70s, yes. Listen to Peter Gabriel era Genesis. I'm dragging Jackson along with me, by the way. I'm like, come on, we're listening to this together because I like it, But I'm like, but listen to how good it was. It's like, imagine being a teenager and being turned on to this, because we had to be in our 40s before we could really appreciate it. Plus, we missed it the first time around.
You see, the thing with me is I was never into that English art school stuff. It kind of began and ended with Bowie for me.
Okay.
I was never into the Nice and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Genesis. And it's so funny because I worked at Charisma and I worked the Genesis Duke album and Peter Gabriel Games Without Frontiers. And I had to go to the Peter Gabriel gig. Professionally, I had to take some media people on. So I pick up the sleeve and it's like Games Without Frontiers. Hans plays with Lottie. Lottie plays with Jane. Jane plays with Willie. Willie is happy again. I thought that sounds like that bloke with the flower pot on his head in Genesis, and you talk about gigs, fellas. That was unbelievable. I had no expectations of that. I just thought he'd left Genesis and he was doing his solo thing, and it was going to be a bit artsy-fartsy.
Right.
And Peter Gabriel, I'm a huge fan of. So yeah, but I would put Peter Gabriel in, one of my top shows as well.
That's actually probably better than a show that you're excited for, is the one where you're like, meh, and then you get there and say, okay, this is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'd have gone and done it, because later on in my career, I had to go to a lot of gigs as well as working all day. But I perfected the art of being seen by the people I had to be seen at the sound check. So I could slip away at like 8:30 and not be there
Smart.
at midnight.
Yeah. Do something memorable, make a scene where everybody sees you, and then you can cut out.
Yeah.
I do that to parties I don't really want to be at too. That's smart. That's a smart move. Yeah. So that's known as the Melt album, the one with Games Without Frontiers, because he named all of his albums after himself at first.
I have a beautiful piece of artwork downstairs that a friend got because he'd worked with Gabriel, but it's that album sleeve signed by, there's like 90 of them, signed by Peter Gabriel and Storm Thornton, who's dead now.
Wow.
And of course he did the sleeves and everything. Yeah, I've got some nice, this all bullshit is due to public demand, all this. It's, when we moved, I didn't want to put holes in the wall, so I got a friend of mine to do a backdrop screenshot of the discs.
Okay, well that was going to be our question. So I'm like, well, that's an amazing collection. But then when you held up your book, it was, it's obviously a backdrop. So I'm like, well, is that his, or is that taken from somebody else's office?
No, these are mine. If you, it's actually got my names on. These are all mine, but I gave a whole bunch of them away. I mean, I gave things away for charities. I mean, one guy paid $15,000 for a gold disc at a charity auction, but for terminally killed kids, which was a great way to raise money for doing nothing. But why anybody would want a disc with my name on above his fireplace is beyond me.
Well,
he's probably changed it to his.
It's a gold, maybe. It's not a bad idea.
Actually. Just crying over it and put a white sticker on it. The only one I really wanted, I gave to my son for Christmas a few years ago, was the Stone Roses. That was
The first one?
Yeah, the first album.
Yeah.
So do you know Noel Gallagher?
Noel Gallagher, he's the first person to say if it wasn't for the Stone Roses, there would be no Oasis,
Right.
And the thing is that there was a band from Manchester called In Spiral Carpets, and Noel Gallagher was a roadie for them.
Right.
Because I knew Clint Boone's a friend of mine. He was the keyboard player in the In Spiral Carpets, and they were pretty popular, but Noel was just like literally on the road with them. And it's funny because, being a Mancunian, you look at the Oasis tour and the kind of fever pitch excitement about it. And they would never fall out until they had an album due. And then they'd be all over the papers because the brother had fallen out. And Noel's getting divorced again now. So it's a good time to reconvene and get a tour
make some
out
money, yeah.
Get a little money. Yeah. But, there's a certain swagger and attitude with the Mancunians. Tony Wilson has this phrase that he said, we're from Manchester, we do things differently here. And when you think of it, even bands like Simply Red and the Factory Lot, if you wanted to, have meetings with them, you didn't get on the train and go to London, they came to see you. And, I was thankful for where I grew up in music, both as a fan and then professionally, because it was a real creative hub. I mean, now, they have the only purpose-built venue. It's called the Co-op, which is right near Manchester City's football ground.
Okay.
And it's purpose-built. And that was when you remember Springsteen going out and doing his bit about Trump the first night in Manchester. That was there. And the Eagles played 3 nights there and they didn't play London. But the thing is, it's acoustically built. So it's a massive venue, but it actually sounds all right when you're inside.
Yeah. Well, can you give our American listeners anyway just a clue as to what those 90s were like when the whole, Cool Britannia was back, Oasis were on top, Blur, all those bands, because we were kind of suffering
through. That was Britpop, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we're suffering through grunge over here, and then when grunge ends, they go to happy, silly stuff like either Hootie and the Blowfish, or they go to that horrible, it's part rap, it's part metal, it's all crap. Who opened for Metallica that I hate, Jackson? Limp Bizkit. Yeah, all those bands all suck. But in Britain, there's this melodic revival going on, and Oasis are absolutely at the forefront of it. What do you remember from those times?
Well, the thing is, I remember speaking to Tony Wilson, who ran Factory Records, and about, it's always been genres. When you think, for instance, punk came out of pub rock, because you could get on that was and that was kind of a revolution in the UK against all the kind of, you know, the Foreigners, the REO Speedwagons, the Asias, the Totos. All these people had 10 albums and 2 good songs, you know. So it was like they revolted. So all these kids could get up and prove that, you know, I can do this. We can just do something based on attitude. But I do think that if you think of it, the weird thing about it all is hip hop must have been, and rap must have been around for 25, 30 years now. I don't know anything. I mean, if you go up the Mississippi Delta blues singers, and then you go to the UK rock acts of the 60s into the 70s, and then the hair bands, and then you've got like punk, and in America you had great stuff. You had the Ramones, you had Iggy Pop, you had all that, and we had the Pistols. But, you know, back in those days, I mean, it's strange because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, the Clash and bands like that are amazing, but there's a load of shit punk bands, you know.
Yeah.
I like the Pistols, I like the Clash. I like the Buzzcocks, but Chelsea and bands like that were like, you know. But
a lot of them can't play. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but everybody was into that kind of scene and things. But realistically, like, it just happened to be at the right time. And I think that the good thing about music is it should be a revolution, really. It should be something that came out. But the weird thing is, like, when rap kind of came in, it never left, and nothing's really come along to compete it. I mean, you still have guitar bands and stuff, but I mean, I've been reading things in the paper of late, and if you look at the charts, there's very few bands. I mean, sometimes in the morning when I have some coffee, I watch NBC, and some person's playing in the streets in New York, and they're double platinum. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, I know. I know.
You know, it's like, who's that? I say to the wife, like, who's he? You know,
it's hard to learn to play the guitar. It's hard to keep 4 or 5 guys together for enough years to get enough experience that you make a good sound together and you write good songs. It's a lot easier to get some pretty girl and say, here, sweetheart, wear this go-go dancer's outfit. Here are your songs. Learn these steps. We'll make you rich. Just shut up. You'll get you a pretty boyfriend, or Harry Styles. Play these songs, wear this dress, say this in an interview, and they can control him. And with rap, yeah, it's easy to write words and then sing over a record that you then scratch that someone else has already made. But it's hard to make original music. And in the States, when Reagan came in and he killed the middle class in a big way, suddenly a lot of middle class families, including black families, couldn't afford to give their kids music lessons anymore, but they still make music.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how hip hop came about. It came out of New York in the 70s, but it got big in the Midwest in the 80s.
It's like a brand, though, isn't it? I mean, like, you know, if I put a record out with Jay-Z, I might have a hit. I can't sing and I can't play, but if it's on his label, people will buy it. So it's kind of like, I mean, good luck to them, the way they kind of do it and everything. But it's the strange thing, going back in the day, I worked with like Simon Cowell for like 6 years, you know, BMG. And, you know, I worked some of the worst records you've ever heard, you know, because he would sign things that were glove puppets and this and that and everything. And then he got lucky with a thing called Robson Jerome, 2 good-looking guys who were on 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday on a network TV. And he got them to record this one song that turned BMG into a loss, into a profit. But the thing is, nowadays, and, you know, I don't want to sound like a boring old man, but the thing is, it's kind of, I was very fortunate because my mentors were the music men, the Chris Blackwells, the Ahmed Ertegans, the Jerry Mosses. It wasn't accountants and lawyers. And they release records now for kind of market share. And the music industry has always been driven by greed. So if you think of it, I mean, it was like, you know, different formats came in. They had cassettes, and here was 8 tracks as well, cassettes. And then when CDs came in, they went back to the record companies and asked them to take a lower royalty. Well, what's the biggest cost in making a record? Recording, as in not on your computer. You tape operate, you know, engineer, producer, you know, like studio. So you would give about like 200 grand to make a record, and then they'd spend the rest of their life paying it back. But like nowadays, I mean, I could make a record. I can't sing and I can't play, but I can make a record. There's something wrong with that. And I think now with kind of AI and stuff, they're going to kind of make things that they're not even on. They just turn up. It's not really their music. It's something else generated in the background. You know, with music, I think growing up, and it probably applies to you guys as well. I've obviously got a few years on you, but the thing is, it was a culture as much as anything. I mean, if you look back to the 60s, I mean, Bob Dylan didn't stop the Vietnam War, but he made kids away, you know. I mean, Neil Young, Fort Edding, Ohio. I mean, when the Dixie Chicks called out Bush, that was the end of their career. You can't do those things now. And that's why I have the greatest respect for people like Taylor Swift, because they're unique. They're making a difference. They're not just an artist. She donates to homeless charities very quietly, and she gives an enormous amount of pleasure to a massive amount of people. And I can't remember when that last happened. We've had successful artists, but not like to the level of what she does and how she does it. And that should, but when you think of it, I mean, even if you look at like Ed Sheeran and Adele, they probably sell a lot more records than a lot of people, but Simon Cowell would never have signed them. It's like, well, you need to lose some weight, you can't stop smoking, you need to do this, and they turn them and manufacture them into something that they can market. It's not about the music.
That's right.
It's hard.
Well, that was the whole American Idol thing. I mean, that's what that was. How you look, and we'll put stuff in front of you for you to sing. You just have to be marketable.
Yeah.
But the other thing with that, Gary, is that I was there at that time because obviously Simon Cowell worked at BMG. But there was a period where like Arista couldn't afford to give him a space. Arista couldn't afford to give him a room because he'd had that many kind of flops that RCA took him in, and then the rest is history type thing. Became really successful. But Simon Fuller was the brain behind. He managed the Spice Girls, and I worked with him with Annie Lennox. And Simon's a genius. He signed Madonna to a publishing deal when he was 24.
Nice.
And the thing is, it was American Idol that started in England as like, I don't know if it's called Britain's or England's Idol, or Britain's Idol. It was a one-off series. And then they couldn't sell it at all. It was Elizabeth Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch's daughter, that actually was the only person that saw the potential of it. But Simon Cowell didn't want to do it. He didn't think he'd work in America. Simon Fuller persuaded him to do it because he didn't think, well, as a Brit, right, there's something about American. I mean, do we remember the Fawlty Towers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's
With
something
John
about
Cleese.
Americans. Exactly. There's something about Americans and like English people being rude to them. And if you go back to American Idol, it wasn't. I mean, the first two artists, two of the first three, Carrie Underwood and Kelly Clarkson, are about the biggest they've had. Yep. People win. Right. But there's so much right with it. It's an incredible marketing tool. When you think of it, they make money off the telephone calls. A load of people queue up in a car park for hours trying to get an audition. And then they have this show and they put people on. And then every time it's record, phone calls and this and that. And then at the end of the day, they put a record out by somebody that they've already told you they like.
Yep.
What record company could do that? I mean, if you put a YouTube album out, there's no guarantee, is there?
Nope.
But they're not careers. They're things that like come and go. And the thing about people like Simon Fuller is he's very, very smart. And when you look at like people like Rick Rubin and stuff, there's some great industry people, but they're kind of quiet in the background sort of people,
True.
And getting Johnny Cash to do tracks like Hurt and things, it's like Trent Reznor says, I can't believe I wrote that song when I hear him do it,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can't believe we've been fortunate enough to hang with you here today, Tony. It's been a joy. I know we can.
Went off tangent.
That's why we bring you on. We're going to bring you back to go off tangent again sometime. Absolutely. Why don't you tell our listeners about your show and your book and anything else you got going?
Yeah. Well, the what I'm doing now, oddly enough, is my wife manages this bed and breakfast, and I did a book signing, and I walked up with like 600 books, and the gig was really full. So what I'm doing now is I'm just basing a career about talking about myself. So I'm just going to go out, and my first book was like Insights from the Engine Room, Lessons Learned from Rock and Roll.
Right.
And it's lessons for corporate America. I mean, if you're going to talk about turning mistakes into opportunities, you talk about Live Aid and Bono screwing up and not doing Pride, which was the only track at the time we'd got on the radio. And you had an audience of 1.9 million people. And your lead singer goes off and disappears. 1.9 billion, not million. Mm-hmm. And so that's a great opportunity in dealing with success. And you talk about the Bowies of the world. So I'm doing a series of ebooks with that. And my brand now is kind of Moments That Rock, which is the title of my book. And my podcast, which is Pantheon with you guys, is totally self-indulgent. If I enjoy the stories, why wouldn't other people? I've had people, and they've said, I don't know if I'd be right for it, Tony. And I'm like this. Listen, this is my podcast. Would I invite you on if I thought you were no good?
Exactly.
And they kind of relent and they come on. But it was the same when I did a radio show. It's like, if I like this record, you have an opportunity to play it and turn other people onto it. And I think that's what music fans want to do. Because all of us, if we're into music, you can't wait for people. I could not wait. When I was growing up, and that applied to Led Zeppelin 1, I got the 9 o'clock train in from where I lived, went into the record store. They had a bunch of records waiting for me to listen to. And then I would always go home with something, and I couldn't wait to go around to my mate's house and play it for him. But I found it. So I have the bragging rights,
Yeah.
And those are things that I think is a cultural kind of things, because whether it's a car or a meal, everything done right is kind of referrals and stuff, and music. I think nowadays it's just hard to kind of understand how it works. I mean, I would not have a clue how to promote an artist nowadays. But so my book is storytelling, and I'm fortunate enough I'm just doing a website as we talk, and the chairman of Walt Disney International referred to me as the greatest storyteller he's ever heard.
Nice. That's high praise.
It's a bad testimonial. I'd rather have that than the president of a record company. But no, seriously, I kind of, and like I said to you about the gratitude and stuff, it's kind of like it's been able to put something back. And if I can tell stories about the likes of some of the greatest artists that ever lived, who won't ever be replaced. We're not going to replace the Bowies of the world and stuff. But there's that fine line where you don't want to sound like the boring old bloke.
Well, that's right. No, but people want to hear the stories. They want to share it. And maybe we're not getting the teenagers, but there's a demographic out there who really wants to hear all this. And that's why we do it. I assume that's why you do it as well.
But the other thing is, I don't know if you guys do it, but one thing, after a lifetime of promoting other people and doing pretty well at the time, and I've always been useless at promoting myself. But nowadays with Instagram and stuff, so I'm going to do a bit of that. And I've got people nudging me. I've got a YouTube channel now, and I've got some really good stories. I mean, Andy Peebles, who did the last interview with John Lennon, he passed away a few months ago, but he tells a story about getting 2 hours with him and then going shopping. It was just before Christmas in Manhattan, and then getting the plane back on the Sunday. By the time he got off the plane, Lennon was dead, So those are kind of pivotal moments that really are very powerfully told by the people that were there. And, I have music industry insiders and artists, and you can't be 20 and have stories, So some of those older people that are grown up and they've got some great back catalogue and a place to share. I really enjoy that. So that's kind of what I want to do.
Awesome.
And keep writing.
Yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep writing.
I
keep
do
doing
2 radio shows as well. I do 2 radio shows. And you do as well. Keep going. We got to keep the fire burning, kids.
Exactly. The rock won't die as long as we're talking about it. Look, thank you, Tony. Look, you're welcome back anytime. Anytime you got something to promote.
You want me, if you're short of somebody and what have you. Well, it depends what you want. I mean, I can talk about, I think I told you this when we were talking, Matt, but the working title of my book was called Will You Shut the Fuck Up? So...
Yeah.
$1 for every time the wife told me that in the morning when I'm awake at 4 and I'm kind of wired. So that's why I don't talk to people after 5 o'clock.
I gotcha. Yeah, well, that's why we do it.
That's great. Thanks very much, guys. Great to meet you, Gary.
Thanks.
And you, Mac.
And you, my friend. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye, guys.
We thank our Pantheon brother, Tony Michaelides, for his amazing career and sharing some of the stories from his time in the music industry. I know he may have gone a little off topic a couple times versus seeing Led Zeppelin for the first time, but obviously that's an amazing time in your life. We wanted a Led Zeppelin story, and we've got one now, but we've got so much more than that because Tony is a music industry veteran. And he's worked with some of the greats, and he's met all the greats. And it just sounds like going to see Led Zeppelin as a teenager may not have triggered, I'm going to be in that business one day. But the pure joy he got from it and his ease at getting backstage just kind of showed that it wouldn't be that unreal or impossible for him to do it as an adult or for him to do it for a living. But it's those stories of wonder when you first go see a rock band that really changed your life, someone you're a huge fan of, and seeing them live was, oh my God, I didn't expect that. That's what we're trying to capture here on First Concert Memories. And Tony's got a lot of great stories, whether it's about seeing music live, seeing bands live. I bet his Peter Gabriel story would be fantastic. Or just all the encounters with the many characters he met and came across during his time in the biz. So odds are we will have him back on our show someday just to kind of shoot the breeze, tell us some great stories, let us behind the curtain on a couple of things that maybe we weren't a part of as mere rock fans. And we want to know, which bands did you see live that changed your lives? What's the craziest instance of going to see a live band from your own rock and roll history? Let us know. You can email us. It's uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. Let us know the kind of stories you want to hear on the show. Let us know the bands that turned you on after you saw them live. And don't forget to listen to us weekly on the Ugly American Werewolf in London. Thanks as always to Pantheon Podcast for making us and Tony part of the family. And thanks to our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, where you can use the code UGLY to save 10% off one entire order. That's it for this month on First Concert Memories. We got a couple of interesting ones lined up. They may not all be rock and roll or the kind of bands that Jackson and I always listen to, but they make for great stories, and that's what we're going for here on First Concert Memories. So you're going to have to stay tuned. And keep going to see live music. It's the only way we're going to keep rock alive.